Duane Matthews is the Vice President of Policy and Strategy with the Lumina Foundation for Education, joining us from Indianapolis this morning. The Lumina Foundation out with a new report, an update on a trend that you've been following on college attainment and workforce demands. Mr. Matthews, let's just begin, though, taking a step back and letting people know what is the Lumina Foundation.
Good morning. Thanks very much for having us on the program. Lumina Foundation is a private foundation based here in Indianapolis, but we work nationally. We're the largest foundation in the U.S. that's focused specifically on college access and success. And much of our work for the last several years has been focused on what we call a big goal. It's or Goal 2025. It is that 60% of Americans should hold high-quality post-secondary credentials by 2025, much of that driven, of course, by what's happening in the economy and the workforce.
So, Mr. Matthews, how close are we to that goal? You've just put out your this is the fourth year of your report. How close are we to that 2025 goal?
Well, the bottom line is that we're not close enough. The U.S. higher education attainment rate, which is what we track, is 38.7% in the year 2011, which is the most recent year the data is available. That's an increase. It's gone up by about 0.5% from the year before. And that it appears that the rate of increase is actually picking up a bit. It had not gone up that much in the last 3 years before that. So that's good news. The rate is definitely going up, but it's not going up quickly enough. And, of course, there's still a big gap between where we are today and where we think we need to be, which is much closer to 60%.
So why the gap?
Well, the gap, I think, has to do with a lot of factors. A lot of it has to do with the way that we think about higher education in this country and the access to college and all kinds of post-secondary opportunities for individuals. We tend to think that only a certain number of people need to go to college. Not everybody needs a college education. About 30, almost 40 years ago, back in the 1970s, the U.S. got to a level of about 40% of Americans getting some sort of post-secondary credential, a college degree, associate degree, baccalaureate degree, what have you. At that point, we kind of thought, well, that feels about right, and we stopped increasing attainment. And so our rate has been close to flat now for about 30 years. But other countries didn't do that. We saw that many countries didn't understand that they were supposed to stop when they got to about 40%, and so they kept right on going. The data that just came out last week from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development showed that some countries are up above even 60%. South Korea today has over 60% of young South Koreans between 25 and 34 have a post-secondary credential. So it kind of shows how the rest of the world is moving ahead, and the U.S. kind of got stuck. I think we kind of got a bit complacent.
So what does that mean for the United States? What has been the impact?
Well, the impact has to do with jobs in the economy, overwhelmingly. So the data on this is quite clear. Everybody kind of knows that if you go to college and get a college degree, you'll make more money in your life than if you don't. Everybody kind of knows that and understands that, and for the most part, people are not surprised by that. But what people are really now beginning to understand is the impact of education on employment. If you're a college graduate in today's economy, you're much more likely to have a good quality job, a middle-class job. And if you don't have some type of post-secondary education, it is much more likely that you'll either be unemployed or in a job that simply does not provide a middle-class income. That discrepancy is becoming quite stark in our economy. It used to be that you could get a good job, and there were a lot of sectors in the economy that provided very good quality jobs, middle-class jobs, where you didn't need a lot of skills or a lot of education to get them. In the last recession, of course, many of those jobs were wiped out. And the long-term trends have been very clear that more and more jobs are requiring higher levels of skills and knowledge. And those skills and knowledge are usually associated with post-secondary education.
Yeah, Duane Matthews, from the report put out by the Lumina Foundation, you wrote this: the Great Recession made this relationship painfully clear. Between the beginning of the recession in December 2007 and its official end in January 2010, the economy lost 5.6 million jobs for Americans with a high school education or less. Jobs requiring an associate degree or some college declined by 1.75 million, while the number of jobs for Americans with a bachelor's degree or above actually grew by 187,000.
That's right. I mean, that is really, I think, to a lot of people, it was to me at least, a shocking statistic. The idea that the economy actually created additional new jobs for college graduates during the recession, the worst recession since the 1930s, is, I think, a big surprise to a lot of people. It was even to us, and we work in this field. Since the recession ended, what happened was that the job market for college graduates really took off. The economy added 2 million additional jobs for baccalaureate degree holders after the recession ended, and the slow job recovery began. The associate degree in some college population gained back all of those 1.7 million jobs that they lost. Meanwhile, for high school graduates and below, they lost additional jobs. The economy lost over 200,000 more jobs for people with high school education or less. So those discrepancies, those gaps, if you will, between the opportunities available to people with post-secondary skills and the opportunities for people who don't have them, those gaps are growing. They're just becoming much wider every day.
So, Duane Matthews, who needs to, in your group's opinion, who needs to attain a higher level of college education, whether it's a two-year degree or a four-year degree?
So we're focused on a few populations that are particularly important. The first one I'll mention is that there are very significant gaps in this country based on race, ethnicity, income, first-generation college students who simply don't go to college and don't complete college in the numbers that they need to. Those gaps are, in fact, widening. Young African Americans, young Latinos, young American Indians have much lower rates of attainment of higher education than whites or Asian Americans. And those gaps, of course, have been around for a long time, but those gaps are actually growing worse. And so we need to deal with that. Primarily, that's an issue of income and the fact that first-generation students, this is meaning people whose parents did not go to college, have a difficult time in our system really understanding how to go to college, what it takes, how to become prepared, and how to pay for college. So all of those are factors. The other big population we're looking at is actually adults. It's one thing to just focus on young people going through high school and then going on to college. We need to do that, of course. But there are millions and millions of American adults who are already in the workforce and are finding their opportunities greatly limited because they don't have the post-secondary education they need to be able to advance in their careers or even hold on to their jobs. Our data showed that there's about 38 million Americans between the ages of 25 and 64. It's fully 22% of the American adult population in that large age range, the working adult population, who actually went to college but never finished. They have college credit, but they don't have any kind of a 2-year or a 4-year degree. We think we need to really focus on that population and other adults who need access to post-secondary education as well.
Duane Matthews, who pays for obtaining this higher level of education?
Yeah, it's a terrific question, and it's a very difficult issue for the U.S. You know, we fund higher education in this country in a sort of a partnership. We believe that individuals should pay a large share of the education, but we also believe that the public has a responsibility to pay as well. So states pay for public higher education in the public system, and the federal government pays through Pell Grants, guaranteed student loans, and other forms of financial aid. So it's a shared responsibility between individuals who and their families, their parents in particular, who pay tuition and oftentimes have to borrow money to take out student loans to pay that tuition, and the public. Of course, what we've seen in this country is well understood. The share of support that's coming from the public has been declining, and that means that the share that is being paid by individuals has been increasing. That debt burden has been going up. The cost of education, of getting the education, has gone up. And that's a very significant barrier to a lot of people to be able to get post-secondary education.
We're talking about college degrees and workforce demands with Duane Matthews of the Lumina Foundation. Tom, you're up first in Dayton, Ohio, Democratic caller.
Good morning.
Morning, Tom.
I have children and grandchildren going to school now, college. And the colleges some of them have gone to community colleges, and they tell them what to take according to their major, and then when they go to transfer to a state college, they've taken several courses that they don't need and have not been told the courses that they still need, and they end up having to go for as much as another year to a community college because the school did not tell them what they really needed. And my granddaughter right now is in nursing school. She was only allowed to have one B to get into nursing school, and everything else had BAs. This girl's not dumb. She's having trouble with this one course, and she checked it out. That course has a 40% pass rate. The same course in the community college has 90% pass rate.
Duane Matthews, your thoughts?
Well, I wish I could say that those are isolated incidents, but they're not. Unfortunately, what you're describing is something that happens to far too many students in this system. We tend to think that students start college, they go for 4 years, they get their degree, they live in a dormitory, they go full-time, they graduate, and they move on with their life. That's the way a lot of people of my generation experience college, but that's not the way most students go to college today. That's probably less than 1 in 5 students, less than 20 students fit that definition. Most students today are doing things like starting in a community college and transferring later to a 4-year institution. Some are going the other way. They start in a 4-year school and transfer to a community college to get the skills that they need. They're moving from one institution to another. They're stopping out. They're working for a while and coming back to get the skills that they need to be able to advance in their careers. This is the way it is. This is the reality of life today, of jobs today, and the way that people do education today. Our system is simply not adept at really serving students that way. Now, there's a lot that could be done to deal with this. For example, in the state of Florida, community college students are guaranteed by the state, under state law, that all of their credits will transfer and all of their students must be applied to a baccalaureate degree. In the state of Florida, what you're describing doesn't happen. What happens is that students who transfer from community colleges to 4-year public institutions in Florida finish at rates actually higher than students who start in the 4-year system and take very few additional credits, perhaps no more than 1 or 2 additional courses to finish their degrees. The reason that happens is because the state made that an issue and took care of that problem and resolved it, solved it. Too many states, though, have not dealt with that. They feel that this is somehow an issue that the institutions themselves can sort of take care of on their own, and frankly, that's just not working.
Duane Matthews, this is quite a specific question, but does the state of Florida accept the credits from a community college from another state?
Yes, they do. They're not covered by the same transfer agreement, but as you might, for obvious reasons, because they don't have the ability to sort of mandate the other requirements, such as common course numbering and some of those things that are also part of the Florida system. But it's certainly fair to say that the universities in Florida, and some other states as well, are much more aware of and accepting of community college transfer students. They don't treat this as sort of an exception or an unusual situation. That's the norm for many, many students in the state of Florida and several other states as well. But in some states, a community college transfer student is seen as still as something of an exception, that they still have to prove themselves all over again once they come to the 4-year institution. And that's really sort of the thing we need to start moving away from, this notion that the student has to fit themselves into a very rigid system. We need much more flexible options for all of the different kinds of people that really need access to this education, because they need the skills, they need the knowledge. If they don't have it, they have very serious consequences in their lives.
Boring File Clerk tweets in this: everyone needs a plumber. No one needs someone with a degree in dance therapy. Your choice of major matters.
Absolutely. The choice of the major does matter. However, a plumber, yet as an example, is an example of a wide number of careers where the skill levels have actually gone up. There's sure, house plumbing, maybe it hasn't changed all that much, but in fact, codes continue to change. You look at specialized plumbing in various industrial facilities and so forth, the demands in that field continue to change. It may sound funny, but the reality is that in almost all occupations, the skill levels continue to advance. And the skills that were sufficient a few years ago in these occupations are no longer sufficient today. You see this especially in fields like healthcare. You also see it in manufacturing, where advanced manufacturing in this country is actually growing, creating jobs, huge opportunities for individuals in advanced manufacturing. But advanced manufacturing, the skill level that people need to work in one of these plants is very different than in traditional sort of old-style manufacturing that this country had, many of those jobs having been wiped out in the recession. So we understand this sort of intuitively, that the skills are going up, but the education has to match.
We're talking with Duane Matthews of the Lumina Foundation for Education. He's the Vice President of Policy and Strategy. Here's our tweet to our followers. Lumina Foundation report, the rate of college attainment improving, but not high enough to meet future workforce needs. And the report there in our tweet, if those that are watching us or following us along on Twitter, you can read it there. You can also go to luminafoundation.org and find the report there as well. George in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, Republican caller. Hi, George.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. Good morning, Mr. Matthews.
Good morning.
Some time ago, I'm glad you brought up the subject of financial aid and shared responsibility. And but also in that list, the money that is received from colleges by foundations and other things, as well as grants. Some years ago on C-SPAN, on the Washington Journal, it may have been as far back as 15 plus years ago, C-SPAN ran a special on the cost of college education, higher education, listing all of the colleges in America, and the amount of money that these colleges receive, not only from the government, but from these certain foundations. I've been in touch with C-SPAN by email, and they have said that they are searching this particular morning program, and it was stated back then, and it may not be true today, and perhaps you can shed a little more light on it, but it was stated back then, truth be known, if a student wanted to go to college, the amount of money that colleges receive from many of the foundations as well as government, and the money was astronomical in the multi-millions, the students actually would not have to pay a penny at all to go to those colleges because of the money they received. Now, I realize that there are costs for the cost of education is going up. There are reasons why some of us maybe think that those reasons are not legitimate, the cost of professors and so forth and so on. But do you remember that program? Are you familiar with that information that came out some 15, 20 years ago? And
Mr. Matthews.
Yes, I'm afraid I don't remember that specific program, but I'm certainly familiar with that issue. I don't know that it's ever going to be possible to make higher education completely free, but we certainly do believe that the cost of higher education does need to come down. More people need to be able to get it, and they need to be able to get it at a cost they can afford. That's not just a matter of increasing the public subsidy, although one could argue that that has to happen. But it also is that we have to lower the cost of delivering higher education. We have a very costly higher education system in this country. There's no denying that fact. According to the international data, we spend first or second in the world on both a per capita and per student basis for our higher education system. We have a very high-quality higher education system in that sense, in the sense of the cost of it, but it may not be a quality system in terms of the numbers of students that are actually being educated, and that's what we have to deal with. We've done a lot of work at Lumina Foundation around increasing the productivity of American higher education, literally helping us to do a better job with the money that we do receive in higher education to serve more students and serve them effectively. Many higher ed institutions are really coming to grips with this issue, but unfortunately, again, many are not. And it's a problem we really are going to have to address. this is an area where technology might be able to play a very significant role. There's a lot of new ways of delivering education to people, high quality education, using technology as part of the package, not the only way that people get education, and we think that those things can really help.
Duane Matthews, Gallup put out a new poll recently that showed Americans say the graduate's job status is key to their college choice. That ranks higher on whether or not they have a high job rate coming out of college. That ranks higher than the price of the college as well as their graduation rate.
Well, I think people do understand that college is an investment. And so they want to understand, are they going to get a return on that investment? So if you're going to pay the money, and even going to a subsidized public education, you're still going to pay a lot of money out of pocket for that education, and you're probably going to have to borrow a lot of that money to pay for that education. People understand that, and they're willing to do it because they've done the math, and they understand that over the course of their life, they're going to be a lot better off with that education than not having that education. But they do want to have some confidence that they're making the right choice. They want to know, if I pay this money and I go to this program and I do what's expected of me, I finish the courses, I get the degree, will I have a good job? Will I have a job that will pay enough to allow me to pay back my student loans? That's a reasonable request, we believe, but that's information that's surprisingly difficult for people to get. At Lumina, we're doing a lot of work to help improve the data and improve the information around those kinds of questions so that people can get answers to that while they're making the choice about not just do I go to school, but where do I go and what do I study.
Jason in Sylvester, Georgia, independent caller. Hi, Jason.
Hi, how you doing?
Morning.
I was calling. I'm probably a good example. I'm a college degree, I got my degree back in '94, and I'm a carpenter and has been for about 15 years. When I first got out of college, there just really weren't many jobs available in my field, which was a communications degree, a liberal arts degree. And so I actually took up carpentry. And I just like to emphasize that I think too many kids out there are being pushed into college without having the time to really realize what's going to be the outcome. They actually get into a tremendous amount of debt through student loans. And when you get out of college with a tremendous amount of debt, it really holds you back. I think there's not enough emphasis spent on basically letting people kind of realize what they're getting into as far as a college degree and what it's going to do for them, when there's a lot of other alternatives out there that you can actually make a lot more money doing, carpentry being one of them. And thank you.
I'd really appreciate that call, and I think that's a point that we have not emphasized enough, and we need to do a better job of talking about. When we talk about post-secondary education, we're not just talking about baccalaureate degrees in traditional fields of study. We're talking about a wide range of education, some of which is at the certificate level, much of which is in vocational and technical fields, but all of which are skill demands, which individual needs to have the opportunity to learn that. They need to go somewhere to get that, and increasingly the place where you go is some form of post-secondary education. These can be workforce development programs, they can be apprenticeships, as well as traditional sorts of college sorts of experiences. But all of it is past high school. It's something that happens after you get your basic education, and that's really the point we're trying to make. And more of those skills are really, again, post-secondary skills. They're college-level skills. It's also not just the specific sort of technical vocational skills we're talking about. Somebody who has a good communications background, for example, and is working in a field like carpentry can apply those skills very effectively in building a business and dealing with customers and dealing with marketing. All of these kinds of other elements of doing the job are also very important as well, and are also other types of skills which you get in college or some kind of education beyond high school. So it's a more complex picture than just simply getting a specific sort of job skills for a specific job and going straight to work. Lifetime skills are different. They're a much wider range. They're much more around communication, problem solving, critical thinking, skills like that. But those are the real skills that people need to really be successful throughout their life.
Marcus Fish tweets in this, Duane Matthews, there are benefits to education, but if everyone has a BA or a BS, it's the new high school degree in the job market.
And that's why we don't say 100%. I mean, our goal is 60% post-secondary education because the data suggests that that is, in fact, the number. There are a lot of low-skilled jobs still in this economy. About 40% of jobs are, in fact, low-skilled jobs that don't require any form of post-secondary education. It's not for everybody. He's absolutely right. The problem we have is we got a lot of people trying to get those jobs because they're not qualified to get the jobs that, in fact, are open. And so you see this widening gap between the low-skilled jobs with the surplus of people seeking those jobs, driving down wages, simple supply and demand, and a lack of people prepared for the jobs that really have the opportunity, that provide the good middle-class income, driving the wages of those jobs up. That gap between wages of jobs and low-skill and skilled jobs is growing. It's growing in the United States, and it's growing in almost every advanced economy in the world.
Well, Nina Nelly then tweets in, Dwayne Matthews, on that point, that as long as corporations keep shipping jobs overseas, there are fewer jobs for all Americans, college educated or not.
Well, and we know that we can't compete for jobs internationally if we try to compete on wages. And that's a lot of the problem. We know that if you try to compete on wages, you simply drive the economy downward. So the way you have to compete is you have to compete on skills. And countries around the world are figuring that out. The successes of the United States, and there are many in the international economy, are in the high-skilled, high-value jobs. Those are the jobs that you can't outsource. Those are the jobs you can't take overseas just trying to find somebody that'll do the job cheaper. And so you have to build the skills of people to be able to keep those good jobs.
So Dwayne Matthews, the Lumina Foundation is saying 60% by 2025 is the sweet spot. How do you know that?
Well, we know it by analysis of the employment trends and the data about workforce demands. A lot of this analysis has been done by groups like the Center for Education and the Workforce at Georgetown University. Brookings Institution has done some of this analysis. There are other groups out there that are looking at this, and many states are looking at their own data, their own workforce demands, their own workforce trends. All of that data suggests that about 60% of American jobs will require post-secondary education of some level by about the year 2018. So this phenomenon is well documented. It's well understood that this is what's happening to jobs in this country, and it's now time for the education system to step up its game and to be able to respond to the demand that is clearly there. So people understand this. Enrollment is at an all-time high in college because people do understand they need to have access to the education.
So inside your report, you put together 10 targets the nation must hit by 2016 to get on track for 2025. What are some of them? Who's going to, besides, what are you doing at the Lumina Foundation, but who do you need help from to reach this goal?
Well, so what needs to happen is, of course, a lot of people need to step up to help make this a reality. For one thing, young people coming through our education system, our K-12 education system, many more of them need to be prepared to be successful in college. We know that. That's not a surprise to anybody that this needs to happen, but we need to get much more serious about raising the standards, raising the quality of education in the K-12 system, but more importantly, even aligning it to what students actually need to know to be successful in college. We know that higher education needs to do a better job of making the education available, and also making it affordable. So there's a lot of effort there that needs to be done. State and federal policymakers have their role to play. Employers have a significant role to play in this, in aligning their expectations and their requirements with the education system and doing a better job of communicating what they're looking for to colleges and universities and other post-secondary providers so that they can respond. So there's a lot of work for everybody to do in this, and we lay a lot of that out in our documents, which are available on our website.
And Dwayne Matthews, where does Lumina Foundation get its money to provide for this report to do the work that you're planning to do?
We're a private foundation. We have an endowment which was set aside for this purpose. We invest the endowment, and the proceeds of that investment, like other private foundations, is what pays for our ability to do our work, the grants that we make, and the other work that we do, like this report. The money that Lumina Foundation has came from a conversion of a a not-for-profit business that did student financing, and those proceeds were set aside for this not-for-profit purpose about 12 or 13 years ago.
All right, Nancy's up next in Rathway, New Jersey, independent caller. Thanks for waiting, Nancy. Go ahead.
Hi, yes, good morning, Mr. Matthews. I find it interesting that every time I listen to these conversations, you know, everybody says you need a college education to get a job, and I have a master's degree in biology, and I've been unemployed since 2010. I've decided to go back to college for a nursing degree, and I've noticed a few things, is that since colleges are so expensive, that many students are taking courses at community colleges and then transferring the credits in to another, maybe a 4-year college. What I notice is that many colleges aren't even accepting equivalent transfer credits because they want the student to take the course there so they can get the money for that course. So they're not accepting equivalent college credits from transfers.
Right, Nancy, and Duane Matthews touched on this a little bit before, but go ahead, Mr. Matthews. Do you have any additional thoughts?
Well, I certainly don't want to minimize the challenges in this employment market. It is a tough job market for everybody, including for college graduates. And a college education is in no way a guarantee of a good job. And I should never imply that it is, and nobody should ever promise that it is. The data, of course, is very clear on this. The unemployment rates are much lower for people with college degrees or other kinds of post-secondary education than people that don't have it. But that's cold comfort to people who have a college degree and are not able to get a job. But you point out something very interesting. Here's an individual with a biology degree who wants to go into nursing. What better preparation for nursing is there than a biology degree, where you can really apply those skills in a setting where you can get a good job? Making sure that a person like that has that opportunity to transfer those credits, get a head start on that nursing degree is something that we need to do.
Michael in New York, Republican caller. You're on the air with Duane Matthews of the Lumina Foundation.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to make 2 points and ask you to respond to them. First, in regards to the gap between job creation and job loss in regards to the degrees, I think that's an example of how our economy has changed, and that lower paying jobs in the service industry have fallen to the wayside, while higher paying service industry jobs like analysts, consultants, and CEOs really have dominated the job market and the attention of the job market. And I'd also like to point out the fact that I think our education systems nowadays are preparing students to satisfy their state needs as opposed to the actual job market needs. And those jobs have been filled by illegal aliens who are taking the low-paying jobs and leaving the people with lower skills and lower degrees standing around saying, well, I don't have the ability to earn a living with the skills that I have. I'd like
Duane Matthews?
Well, certainly on the first point, that's absolutely right. The shift is less about a shift from low-skilled jobs to high-skilled jobs, or from industry sector to industry sector. That's the way it used to be, and that's not actually what's happening today. What's happening is that within all of these occupations and within all of these industry sectors, the skill demands are going up. So I earlier mentioned the example of manufacturing, where low-skilled manufacturing jobs have been lost, but high-skilled manufacturing jobs are actually being created. You see that in the service sector. You see it in many sectors of the economy. So that's certainly the case. On the other point, you know, all I can say is that we've got too many people in this country trying to get the low-skilled jobs that are declining in number. It's like a game of musical chairs. You've got a game of musical chairs for the low-skilled jobs, and you're taking chairs away from that. And we're taking those chairs and we're putting it into the game for the people with the high-skilled jobs. We're adding chairs over there. And you got some people locked into these two games, and it's a terrible situation if you're in the low-skill game. So we need to make routes. We need to create opportunities for people to escape this low-skill a sector which is declining, not going away, certainly, but declining, and have the opportunity, if they can and if they want to move into the higher skill occupations.
On our line for Democrats, Marcus, Hazel Crest, Illinois.
Yes, hello?
Hi, Marcus, you're on the air.
Okay, well, I live in Illinois, and I feel that here in Illinois, it is not easy, but incredibly not challenging to get into college. I know a number of people who almost took the back door into our state universities. They go in through the School of Agriculture, and in the School of Agriculture, you don't need that good of grades. And then they transfer, take a few ag courses, and they transfer into the career that they want, in their subject that they want. And I feel that it's extremely easy to get a degree in Illinois, but the problem is these kids, especially in the lower income areas, don't know that they can get into college. They don't know, they're not being educated in their high schools and in their grade schools. They think that they don't have that self-worth that I'm going to go to college. And I think we really, as a country, need to work on that, tell these kids that they can get to college. Because tuition here, for example, if someone wanted to go to UIC, they could go there for $13,000 a year in state tuition, and they could easily get a degree and advance their life. But I feel like we don't do a good enough job telling these people that they can do this.
There's little to add to that. That's absolutely right. When you start talking about this as being something that we want more people to have that opportunity to think about it themselves, we need to do a better job of getting the word out. Not just, though, the caller makes a very interesting and very important point. This is not just about giving them the motivation to go to college or letting them know that college is available to them, but also getting them early enough so that they know what it actually takes to be successful. It's not enough just to go, put in your 4 years, get a piece of paper that says you're a college graduate. Nobody is saying that's what we need. What you need is the actual skills, the actual learning. You need to have the knowledge that degree represents. Every piece of data we've looked at says that's what employers are actually looking for. They want the skills. That's what they need. It's not just the piece of paper. So we need to help young people, particularly these students coming out of rural America, students from these populations that traditionally have not gone to college, first-generation students whose nobody in their family has gone to college. They don't know what it takes, and they also don't know what courses should they be taking in high school to get prepared. How should they be saving money or getting some sort of a financial plan? What is the type of education that they could go into? What are the career fields that are open to them that they might consider doing? We need to do a much better job of getting that information available to people.
Baltimore, Maryland. JD is watching us there on our line for Democrats. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I just wanted to tell you about my situation. Because I'm in my young 30s now. Recently unemployed, was working for the city. But when I was, 16, 17, a senior in high school, I feel that kind of unknowingly signed away, a huge future earning potential. I'm now for about a decade have been paying close to $400 a month in student loans. I want to go back and get something in a more high demand degree, especially in the Baltimore area, like rehabilitation therapy or something, medical related because of the hospital system. But that would entail me going back and getting, an undergrad degree in something completely different than my degree, which was in business. That's going to entail me taking on an entire new set of student loans. And, I kind of feel like I'm in a catch-22 because, I see what is necessary. Having worked in, employment, I understand your numbers, but I think there's a lot of people, especially in my generation and this age bracket, that are in the same boat and are kind of, pocketing themselves into some corporate world, and these corporations know this and see this because of the employment rate. So it's artificially keeping wages down on them, which, I want to go back and change careers, but I also don't, what am I going to do with my $400 now? Sure, I can defer it while I'm in school, but, then when I get out, am I going to be paying $600 a month, $700 a month in student loans?
All right, JD, we'll have to leave it there. Duane Matthews, final thoughts here.
Well, I mean, that's a good synopsis of the situation we face. I think most people understand that education used to be something that you kind of got early on at one point in your life. I've heard it described as sort of like getting your shots. You got your inoculation, you got your education, and then you moved on and you were done with it. And I think people understand today that's not really the way it is. Almost everybody has to continually develop their skills. The fields in which they work are constantly changing and evolving. And if you don't keep on learning, you really get left behind. Unfortunately, this is not always a happy situation. People lose their jobs. Entire industry sectors can go away and they have to get new skills. We simply have to make it possible for people to do that. Here's for somebody who has the motivation, the desire, sees the need to do it, but is really struggling to make it work for him because of the choices that he has to face. That's really unfortunate because we all lose as a nation when people like that don't have that chance to go back and build their own skills and make their life better.
Duane Matthews with the Lumina Foundation. Thank you, sir, for your time this morning. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks very much for having us on the program.